I, Cato Sicarius, is, or rather was, the captain of the Ultramarine Second Company. He now acts as the head of Rabute Gilliman's personal guard, and is working at his side as a strategist and warrior, as he always has been, very impressively. Hello everybody, my name is Spoons Rattling, and today we are covering Cato Sicarius of the Ultramarines. So, Cato Sicarius is a character that has quite a bit of history in 40k, but in 10th edition he comes in at 85 points. He has a fairly standard stat line of movement 6 inches, toughness 4, a 2+ save, a 4+ invulnerable save, 5 wounds, leadership 6, and OC 1. This is overall pretty standard, though not standout for the points. In terms of ranged weapons, he does have a master-crafted plasma pistol, which is 12-inch range with 1 attack that hits on 2s, at strength at AP 3 and damage 2. A not zero chance of killing something like a Space Marine is always handy when you get up close and personal. And then he has the Sword of Talisar, which has lethal hits at 6 attacks that hit on 2s, at strength 5, AP 2, and damage 2. This is a fairly whatever profile. It's not necessarily bad, but it's not standout either, and for the points it's especially not standout. In terms of abilities, he has Leader, which is, of course, allows him to join units. And then his 2 abilities are Lead from the front. While this model is leading a unit, they gain the Scout 6 inches ability, and their weapons gain the Assault keyword. This is a interesting enough ability just to give a unit Scouts, though he doesn't have anything that isn't, there's nothing too shocking he can give Scouts to. It is a nice ability to have. And then his second ability is Lightning Assault. Once per turn, when an enemy unit ends a normal, advance, or fall back move within 9 inches of this unit may make a normal move of 6 inches if they are not in an engagement range. This is useful to engage on your own terms, or to simply jump behind cover if you're about to take a Withering Fire of medium to low AP fire, as well as being able to get closer to enemies that you may want to jump with ease next turn. For the 85 points, there's nothing really standout here. 85 points is more expensive than a standard captain, and his melee is worse than a standard captain, and I'd say his ranged weapons are as well, as he can't take something like the Mastercrafted Bolter that the standard captain can. Overall, though, it's not horrible, it's just not standout for the points. In terms of leader options, he can lead Assault Intercessors. The wound rerolls are pretty nice, and with the extra melee weapons that they have, they can really help scrap the midboard nice and early, just because, of course, this guy gets them there turn 1 without issue. He can lead Blade Guard Veterans, but I think the problem with that is Blade Guard Veterans generally like to get something like a different melee weapon or a different damage buff from their leaders, so just extra mobility is nice, but Cato doesn't bring enough himself for the extra speed to be extra useful. And I would usually just bring a transport with something like a captain who could give them free stratagems for potential extra damage, or even a lieutenant who, of course, you could run along Cato, but I probably wouldn't. Company heroes generally like to prefer protect units like Uriel Ventress or Adrax Agatone, or not Adrax, Vulcanistan, and they aren't they don't really like fighting on the front lines, so having Scouts doesn't really do much for them. Stern Guard, I think he's a fine leader for. Getting to rapid fire range a lot earlier is always a nice option. And then, of course, there is also the Tactical Squad. Now, Tactical Squads have their own issues, however. I think they prefer to just be kept simple and cheap with just their special weapons, and then you combat squad them. And that's sort of where that story ends. So in terms of leader options, I'd probably run him with Assault Intercessors, though I think if you wanted to, I think Blade Guard Veterans are a fine choice, though you may have to double down to bring a Lieutenant for them to get some damage buffs, which would be very useful. So in terms of detachments, he likes Advance and Charge because he gives his weapons Assault, and Honor the Chapter is good on all melee, but especially mid-strength melee like his sword. In terms of Anvil Siege Force, he doesn't have much shooting and doesn't offer that much shooting, so not much use in that detachment himself. Iron Storm does love having Scouts and Infiltrators, but I would rather just use Scouts themselves. This guy's way too big advancement for just a utility unit. Firestorm, he likes Crucible of Battle. It's very useful. Advance and Charge pairs well with the Assault weapons when you're in Stormlance. And in terms of Vanguard, he already has Scouts, so there's not too much that he gains from having Blade-driven Deep. If you did want to run that, you could, but I wouldn't. I would keep... it's weird to say this because you're investing a character, but I think Cato is best served as a cheap auxiliary character, really. And in First Company, I would mention he can lead Blade Guard. If you're using the detachment, this guy is a fine option for Blade Guard veterans to get to the front just a touch faster. But again, as I mentioned, I would rather just bring oh god, I'm having a brain fart. Bring a transport. This guy could give scouts to a transport, I suppose, if you loaded it up with his unit and then just put them into the transport. It would also gain scouts. But in terms of detachments, it's kind of the same thing with a lot of characters. They really like Gladius, and there's certainly something to be said about Stormlance or even Vanguard. But yeah, if you're running him, I would probably just run him in Gladius. If you're trying to make him a centerpiece of your, or not centerpiece, but a focal point of your army, he's at his best in Gladius, like a lot of Space Marines are. But a close second, I would say, Stormlance. I think he's very solid there, just because, again, the units he lead, they gain assault on their weapons, so they get to shoot and advance and charge, which is a very useful ability, as we saw on this guy's sort of mentor, if you will, in Marnius Calgar. So Cato is really close to being a really good character, in my opinion. I think he just lacks one, like all the ingredients are there, but it's raw. It's not cooked yet. It needs something extra. It needs to be bound together with one final thing, and I think the main problem with that is his melee. His mobility stuff is solid, which is always good for a melee unit, but units like Blade Guard or even Assault Intercessors really want some extra muscle from characters you attach to them, and this guy doesn't really bring that much compared to just the sergeants in the squad, or the entire squad when it comes to Blade Guard. And the normal captain, who's cheaper, gives you free CP, which helps the army, because then the command points you do generate, you have more opportunities to use them. So, on the whole, Cato's pretty so-so. His melee is okay. His buffs keep his unit in the fight for a solid amount of time. They usually fight on their own terms, but the main problem is his own melee. I think if the Sword of Talisar, or whatever its full name is, had, I don't know, if you gave it something like 8 attacks, 9 attacks, then we would be talking a little bit more, because then he would have some ground on just a captain with a power fist, or a lieutenant with a power fist. Because his melee is no better than either of those characters, and those characters offer better buffs. So the options are buff his melee, or drop his points by a preferably significant amount. Overall, Cato isn't, again, he's not awful, I just don't think he offers that much. So if you do have him, maybe just run him as a normal captain if you want to run his model, which I don't see why you would. I don't think he has a very nice model. It's old. He's on a tiny base, which does have some utility in getting easier into combat. But overall, he just doesn't bring much to the table. And he is, he just doesn't have much. Now I will not make the joke from the TTS again. I've been Spoons Rattling. I hope you enjoyed this video. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you all in the next video.